All right, so today we're going deep on a case that has captivated true crime fans for nearly 2 decades. The disappearance of Tammy Myers.
Yeah, it's one of those cases that just sticks with you. So many twists and turns and still so many unanswered questions, even after all this time.
You're telling me, just looking at the material we have here, it's clear Tammy's life was complicated even before she vanished.
Absolutely, and it's crucial to understand those complexities to truly grasp the mystery surrounding her disappearance.
Right. So we know Tammy was a mother of three, working as a dancer to support her family after her husband Ryan was injured.
And that's where she met William Greer. At first glance, he seemed like a real catch, financially stable, charming, almost too good to be true.
Yeah, the classic knight in shining armor act.
Yeah.
But as we've seen in so many of these cases, appearances can be deceiving.
Oh, absolutely. And the deeper we go into the source material, the more apparent it becomes that Greer was anything but a knight in shining armor. He fit the profile of an abuser, really classic textbook stuff.
So initially, he was charming and attentive, but then things took a dark turn.
Exactly. That initial charm was just a facade. As the relationship progressed, the mask started to slip and the abuse began. And the really disturbing part is that Tammy documented it all.
Yeah, the photos of her injuries, the notes she kept, and the conversations she had with friends and family, it's all incredibly chilling. It makes you wonder why she stayed in such a dangerous situation for as long as she did.
That's a question a lot of people ask when they hear about cases like Tammy's, and it's understandable. But it's also important to remember that leaving an abusive relationship is rarely simple or easy.
Right. There are often so many factors at play: fear, financial dependence, emotional manipulation.
Exactly. Victims of abuse are often trapped in a complex web of control and fear, making it extremely difficult to break free. And in Tammy's case, it seems she was experiencing all of those things. She was financially dependent on Greer, terrified of his escalating violence, and possibly even holding on to a sliver of hope that he would change.
It's a heartbreaking reality. So let's move on to December 19th, 2006, the night Tammy vanished. What exactly happened?
Well, according to the reports we have, Tammy and Greer were at his home in Spring, Texas. Witnesses, including Tammy's children from a previous marriage, reported hearing a heated argument erupt between them.
Oh, wow, that's just chilling to think about. Okay, so a huge fight, and then what?
Then nothing. Silence. Tammy just disappears.
Okay, that's already sending shivers down my spine. So how long did it take for anyone to realize she was missing and report it?
Unfortunately, it was days before a missing person report was officially filed, and that delay could have been a critical factor in the case.
You're right, those first 48 hours are absolutely crucial in a missing persons case. Every minute counts.
Exactly. The longer someone is missing, the colder the trail gets. Witnesses' memories fade, evidence can deteriorate or disappear, and the chances of finding the person alive decrease dramatically.
So precious time was lost in Tammy's case. And then, to make matters worse, we have this unbelievable twist. Greer gets arrested for public intoxication, and he just casually confesses to shooting Tammy. What are the odds?
It might sound like a scene from a movie, but it happens more often than you think. People confess to crimes they didn't commit for various reasons, sometimes to protect someone, sometimes because they're seeking attention, or even because they're experiencing mental health issues.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
But in this case, it seems pretty clear that Greer wasn't trying to protect anyone.
Right. And the problem for investigators was that they didn't have any physical evidence to corroborate his confession. Without a body, without any concrete proof that a crime had actually been committed, they had to release him.
Wait a minute. He admits to shooting Tammy, and they just let him go.
Yeah.
That's insane. How is that even possible?
As frustrating as it is, it highlights a crucial principle of our justice system. You need evidence to support an arrest or charge. And in Tammy's case, that missing link was the concrete proof connecting his confession to her disappearance.
So the question is, did that proof eventually surface? Did investigators find something that corroborated Greer's story and linked him to Tammy's disappearance?
Well, eventually, yes. But remember, this case is full of twists and turns. The truth is a tangled web, and unraveling it takes time.
Oh, I'm ready to untangle this web. Lay it on me. What did they find?
Well, a search of Greer's home ultimately revealed some pretty disturbing findings. Blood stains, bullet holes, and even a blood-soaked mattress.
Ugh, it's awful. I can only imagine what was going through the investigators' minds when they made those discoveries.
It painted a pretty grim picture, that's for sure. And it gets even more disturbing when you consider the testimonies of Tammy's children. They were at Greer's house that night and reported hearing the argument, the gunshot, and even, well, this is hard to even say. They heard Greer ask Tammy, "Are you dead or are you still alive?"
Oh my God, that's absolutely chilling. To think those kids witnessed such a horrific event, it just breaks my heart.
Their accounts are incredibly powerful. Eyewitness testimonies like that, coupled with the forensic evidence found at the scene, were starting to build a very strong case against Greer.
So they finally had enough to arrest him, right?
You would think so, wouldn't you? But here's the thing. Remember how I said this case was full of twists? By the time authorities had gathered enough evidence to build a solid case, Greer had vanished. He was indicted for first-degree murder in 2007, which, by the way, implies premeditation, but he was long gone.
Wait, so we have a confession, a crime scene, and a suspect who's pulled a disappearing act. This is like something straight out of a true crime novel. What happened next?
Well, it really is like something you'd see in a movie or read in a book, isn't it? A confession, a crime scene, and then poof, the suspect just vanishes.
It's mind-boggling. I mean, how do you just disappear in this day and age, with all the technology and surveillance we have?
It's not as hard as you might think, especially if someone is determined and resourceful. They could be using aliases, living off the grid, maybe even fled the country.
I guess that's true. And this was back in 2007, before social media and facial recognition were as prevalent. It makes you wonder, is he still out there somewhere?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? But, while the authorities are trying to track down Greer, Tammy's family is left with this unimaginable void. No answers, no justice, no closure.
Reading through these sources, it's just heartbreaking to see the impact Tammy's disappearance has had on her family. Her daughter, Nikki Bates, was only 7 years old when Tammy vanished.
Can you imagine? To lose your mother at such a young age, that kind of trauma, it leaves a lasting scar.
Absolutely. And Nikki has been so vocal about the pain and confusion she's endured all these years, constantly replaying that night in her mind, searching for any clue that might lead to her mother.
It's a burden no child should ever have to carry. And then there's Ryan Myers, Tammy's former husband. He's spoken about all the milestones Tammy's missed, the birthdays, the graduations.
He said she's a grandmother now, 8 times over. It's just a constant reminder of everything that's been stolen from them.
It's a stark reminder that the ripple effects of crimes like this extend far beyond the immediate victim. It touches everyone they loved and left behind.
It's just devastating. But, what's really inspiring is the resilience and determination Tammy's family has shown in their fight for justice. I mean, her case has been featured on America's Most Wanted, and the U.S. Marshals are still actively searching for Greer.
That's the power of media attention, isn't it? Keeping these cases in the public eye, generating leads, reminding everyone that Tammy is not forgotten.
And maybe, just maybe, someone out there knows something, has seen something that could help bring Greer to justice. But after all this time, is there any realistic chance of actually finding him?
Well, it's a long shot, that's for sure. But you know what they say? Stranger things have happened. Fugitives have been apprehended after decades on the run. And sometimes it just takes that one little piece of information, that one tip from the public to crack a case wide open.
So there's still hope.
There's always hope. It's what keeps families like Tammy's going. It's what fuels their search for answers and their fight for justice.
I love that. Now, I think it's important to take a step back for a moment and talk about the larger issue at play here, domestic violence. The sources you provided make it pretty clear that Tammy was in a very dangerous and abusive relationship with William Greer.
Absolutely. Tammy's story is a tragic reminder of how prevalent domestic violence is and how quickly it can escalate. It's not always physical abuse either, right? It can be emotional, psychological, financial. It's about power and control.
And it can happen to anyone, regardless of age, gender, or socioeconomic background. It's a silent epidemic, and often, by the time it comes to light, it's too late.
That's why it's so crucial to recognize the signs of domestic violence, to speak out and to seek help. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, there are resources available. You don't have to suffer in silence.
Absolutely. There are hotlines, shelters, support groups, and counseling services. Please, if you're in danger, reach out. There is help available.
You are not alone. And Tammy's story reminds us of just how important it is to raise awareness about domestic violence and to advocate for policies that protect victims and hold abusers accountable.
Well said. Now, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to Tammy's case specifically. We've talked about the investigation, the evidence, the impact on her family, and the broader issue of domestic violence. But the question that still lingers is, what does justice look like in a case like this, where so much time has passed and the perpetrator remains at large?
That's a tough one, isn't it? Yeah, it's a really tough question. I mean, what does justice even mean in a case like this, where so much time has passed and there are still so many unanswered questions?
Right. Like, on one hand, you have the legal definition of justice, catching Greer, having a trial, a verdict, a sentence. But does any of that truly bring closure for Tammy's family?
I think that's what makes this case so difficult. It goes beyond just the legal aspects. Justice, in this case, it's about more than just punishment. It's about healing, about finding some sense of peace and closure.
Exactly. And for Tammy's family, part of that closure might involve finding her remains,
Yeah.
giving them a place to grieve, to say goodbye.
Absolutely. That would be such a significant step towards healing for them. It's hard to even imagine the pain of not knowing where your loved one is, of not being able to lay them to rest.
And then there's the question of Greer himself.
Uh,
Will he ever face consequences for his actions? Will he ever admit what he did?
it's hard to say. But even if he is apprehended and brought to justice, it might not erase the pain and trauma that Tammy's family has endured all these years.
You're right. Some wounds just run too deep. But I think it's important to remember that there's still hope. Hope that Greer will be found, hope that Tammy's remains will be recovered, and hope that her family will find some measure of peace.
I agree. Hope is what keeps us going, even in the darkest of times. And speaking of hope, I think it's incredibly inspiring to see how Tammy's daughter, Nikki Bates, has channeled her pain into purpose. She's become a powerful advocate for other families of missing persons.
She really is an amazing woman,
Yeah.
turning such a horrific experience into something positive, using her voice to help others who are going through similar struggles.
It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit, the ability to find meaning and purpose even in the face of unimaginable tragedy.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the disappearance of Tammy Myers, what are some key takeaways for our listeners? What can we learn from this case, and what can we do to help?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is the importance of awareness.
Yeah.
Awareness of domestic violence, awareness of the resources available to victims, and awareness of the fact that these cases are happening all around us.
We can't just turn a blind eye. We have to be willing to speak up, to intervene, to support victims, and to hold abusers accountable.
Exactly. And if you know someone who you suspect might be in an abusive relationship, reach out. Let them know that you're there for them, that they're not alone.
And if you have any information about Tammy's case, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem, please contact the authorities.
Even the smallest detail could be the missing piece of the puzzle that helps bring Tammy home and brings her family some peace.
This case is a stark reminder that there are still so many unanswered questions, so many families searching for their loved ones, and so much work to be done to address the issue of domestic violence.
It's a call to action for all of us to get involved, to raise awareness, and to advocate for change.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the disappearance of Tammy Myers. If you have any information about this case, please contact your local authorities or the U.S. Marshals Service. Until next time, keep seeking knowledge, keep asking questions, and keep the conversation going.